Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this afternoon session on Introduction to Digital Accessibility. I'm Geetha-Loganathan from Biological Sciences, and I'm the Accessibility Fellow last year. And I'm going to do this presentation along with my fellow Yiru. Yiru, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. This is Yiru. I am also the accessibility fellow in the past year 2023. I am a 5th year marketing assistant for professor from School of Business. Thank you.
Thanks, Yiru. So in this presentation, we would like to just provide the basics or the introduction to digital accessibility and the objectives or the goals we follow on campus and how to make things easier for everyone. And also we will just touch base on the basics or the overview of digital accessibility we have here. And we have individual sessions this week and next week, where we'll cover the objectives in detail. So this presentation is going to be an overview of digital accessibility. So just to start with, what does accessibility mean to you? Can anyone in the audience just provide your ideas on accessibility when you just hear the term accessibility, what it means to you? Okay, so let me just continue. So accessibility is having anything, any facility or any service or any information that can be provided to everyone. So it is almost having, exactly as Amy shared in the chat, making content available in multiple formats to meet various learning needs. Exactly. So when it comes to accessibility, we talk about digital accessibility, but in general, anything for everyone, so that we'll have inclusive and equity, and having the same amount and same type of experience shared between all who needs it, and as well as to everyone who's not in need of it, but could be benefited from using those resources. So this slide is usually the first slide that will be shared with any accessibility talks you'll be hearing. So this clearly explains what accessibility means. So here in this cartoon, a person is cleaning snow to make everyone enter the building. So there are two ways, either by steps or using the ramp. And if the person is going to just clear off the snow and the stairs, yes, it could be helpful. There's nothing wrong with it. It will allow most of them to get into the building. But on the other hand, if the ramp has been cleaned, no one else or none of them in the crowd will be left out. Everyone, including people with disabilities, can able to reach the entrance. So accessing something or accessibility is proactive, which is pretty much having same experience or same service provided to everyone. And I think it is a sort of social justice. And when it comes to digital accessibility, as a teacher, we all want to provide equal learning opportunity to our students, but it is not intentional. Sometimes we try to concentrate more towards the contents rather than making it more accessible. So there's nothing wrong with it, but it's always we need to have accommodations provided to certain students. When we are working towards accommodating someone, that means we are retroacting rather than being proactive, because it's not going to be same as what the other students will be receiving. So accessibility is not only for someone with disabilities, but also even for people who can function normally, but might need to use accessibility resources in certain situations. So we try to have access work for everyone. So that's the main goal of accessibility. And when it comes to accessibility, always we need to keep in mind that most, like 1 in 5 Americans, which is going to be a lot in the whole population, will have a disability. And this number can be higher now after the pandemic, I believe. And when we talk about disability, it is not only what we can identify by just looking at them, but it's also something which cannot be identified until the person is able to claim for it or can able to inform us about it. So it could be anywhere between physical disability like hearing or visual or some sort of physical disability, but it can also be mental and it can also be emotional. So in recent times after the pandemic, we are dealing with students having mental and emotional disabilities more, which are not being addressed all the time. So I have my own personal experience that I was not able to understand that until I had a personal experience with a student suffering with a partial visual impairment. So I tried to accommodate the student, I tried to help my maximum, but I was not aware of all the accessible resources and how to use them in order to help the student. So if I would have made the course accessible, then the student would have been benefited more, rather than I try to accommodate the student by trying to print the materials with larger fonts, changing the color. So I was still helping the student, but the student was not getting the same experience as the other student in the class. So at that time, I thought about having ideas or having more ideas about accessibility. And luckily, I got the email on the same week about the Accessibility Fellow program. And I signed it up immediately the next day. And it's really helpful. And now I could at least be satisfied that I'm providing accessible contents to my students, and which might need to be improved definitely, but at least I'm satisfied with what I'm doing. So coming back in here, disabilities can be permanent. It can be any physical disability that is permanent, or it can be due to some accident, so it can be temporary. Or sometimes even a normal person, when the hands are full, they still need the help. So the key point here is accessibility will be covering wider range of learners, and it will provide the maximum information It'll make it easier for the learners, reducing the barriers to get into the information provided. So what we work on campus. So we have 5 principal goals of digital accessibility. We are just adapting more towards the 5 objectives in here because accessibility is overwhelming, it's vast. So there's a lot to learn and a lot to do. But at least if we could able to get these 5 principles workable, we should be covering most part of the accessibility, most part of the information. So the 5 principles or the 5 goals we concentrate on. The first one, making the documents structured. So when we say structured contents, before I get into that, I would like to mention, we are going to just give a basic idea and introduction to all these 5 principles. And we have separate sessions, which is going to cover in detail about each of this, or most of it, I should say. So structured content, having the document presented in a easily readable and understandable format without any misinterpretations. This is not only for the in-person reader, but also for the screen reader. And the second goal is to have text equivalence to any form of data that is provided as images or as graphs or maybe as any videos or audios or even any sort of multimedia stuff. And the third one, to have a better or adequate color and contrast in the documents presented. And also to provide the hyperlinks in a proper way within the text that could be reachable without any issues. And as much as possible to use a simple plain language that could be received by all type of audience. So these are the 5 goals that we will be insisting on campus for digital accessibility. The first one, structured content. So as I mentioned already, providing the content using a structured format. Usually it is done by having headings and lists instead of just providing like a bunch of paragraphs. There's nothing wrong with it, but the contents are same. But it's going to be easier for the learners to perceive the information, as you could see in this slide. The information provided here in the left and the right are pretty much the same. There's nothing been included or deleted in any of this. It's all pretty same, but obviously we see the difference there. So this is just a recipe for making a cookie, but the difference here is on the right, we are having the same content structured to have a heading and to have a list. Here, like we could readily get like what's needed for this recipe and also step-by-step instruction on the directions. So it's easy for the learner to follow something, or it's easy for the learner to listen to the screen reader, and the screen reader is going to pretty much get like, this is the heading, this is the subheading, and these are the lists of paragraphs, and here is the normal text. So it's going to tell the difference in here, and it's easy for the learner to understand what is being presented. And usually we could do this easily by having the styles format available in Word or in Google Docs. So there will be a separate session that will be covered by E on structured contents. So we will be covering that in detail in the session. So please join if you're interested. And the second one is the text equivalence. So text equivalence is providing the description of any form of data, any form of information that's provided in the form of image, audio, video, or any type of multimedia objects. So it has often been confused whether it is repetitive to have the same information provided as a text in addition to the images. So this is really helpful for the learners to get the information on what is presented in the image. So sometimes this is necessary when we are meeting with like visual disability people, or it is also necessary to detail the purpose of the image in the text. Sometimes the images are presented just for decorative purposes instead of just presenting the information itself. So in that case, an alternative text will be very helpful. So the main objective is for us to mention whether the image is providing the actual content or it is decorative. Number two, it also tells the purpose of the image. Number three, it is going to describe the significance and the content, how the image is going to help to understand the content that is present in the text. So presenting a text legend is going to help to understand the significance. So in either way, it is not, I mean, we are not recommending to limit the number of images, but we just want to specify to explain the purpose of the image that is presented. So this is an example. We have a logo and there is a text description with it. I mean, even if the logo is just there, yes, we could get it, but having a text description along with it is really helpful for people who are not aware of the Sony system, right? Or even when we are having any visually challenged people, the reader could be able to explain what is being shown in the figure. So having the text description is going to be completely optional, but we recommend it because it's going to be helpful for everyone to understand the text.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I would like to introduce about the third policy called color contrast. Color contrast is in this particular text context refers to the difference in terms of color luminance, which means brightness, or color differences between the text and its background. It is a crucial aspect of the design that ensures the content is easily readable or perceivable by individuals with visual impairments, such as low vision, like myself, and color blindness. Okay, so you can easily see in terms of this three examples. The first one is simply black and gray, black fonts with gray background. And then the third one is the kind of teal fonts with, the gray, light gray background. And the third one is in not so readable yellow font with the light gray background. So you can see it very clearly which one is more clear to you, although you probably don't have low vision like me. So in terms of the color contrast, there is a ratio to contrast to help us, the course designers or regular designers, to figure out the best ratio between the font color and the background color. Next slide, please. Thank you. So why color contrast is so important to people? Because obviously it enables clarity and readability. And it also helps us as readers understand to enhance our visual organization and help us navigation along a very content-rich slide, for example. And it also add help to creating a inclusive learning environment encounters all individual learners, no matter our vision status or other disabilities. Okay, so next one we see how can we how can we use color to make one's digital experience more accessible? We can use definitely high contrasts, also by applying the rules of avoiding color only communication, having consistent color usage, test for our content accessibility before we deploying it to the students, and we can also offer alternative options. When we have those concerns about color contrast in our teaching materials, we can always do the self-check by consulting different websites and tools. Okay, so we can creating a combination of colors with enough contrast that refers to having high resolution as well as having high having accessible color palette and having strong distinguishments between our font color and the background color. Next slide, please. Hey, so how can we do that? How can we use color to facilitate color contrast? We can actually pairing a light color with a dark color to make our digital content more accessible to the majority of the people. However, if you want to pair the colors of similar in shade, we want to make sure that we check the available tools online to make sure that they produce enough contrast to meet the accessibility standards. And here is a example. Here is the one example. You can see the first line of example have really low color contrast that even I look at it very carefully. I cannot figure out what is the content of the first example. The second example has a reasonable contrast ratio that typically most of the regular people can actually understand and read the content. However, it will probably feel more comfortable reading easy reading the third example with a higher level of color contrast ratio. Okay, so the web content accessibility guideline actually have specific. Could you return to the previous one? I want to touch base on more on the color contrast ratio. The web content accessibility guidelines have specific standards for color contrast ratio to ensure readability. The color contrast ratio is calculated based on relatively luminance, which is the brightness between the ratio between the text itself as well as the background colors. The ratio is expressed numerically, which makes it easier to understand. The higher number, the higher ratio indicate the better contrast. Okay, and the minimum ratio can be ensured for the normal contrast. For example, font smaller than 18 in terms of size. However, which is the standard for the second example, that is 4.5 by 1. But if our fonts is larger, very contradictory to my previous believing is that when the font is larger, the desired contrast ratio should actually be higher. Okay, so the enhanced color ratio for the larger text larger than 18 font size 18, for example, size 14 if bodied, has a lower contrast requirement. For example, the ratio needs to be at least 3 to 1. Okay. The next one, please. So is there either comparison between the black and white picture and the colorful picture? So the colorful picture for myself is when I look at the colorful picture, I can easily figure out it is probably the competition, the play between New York Jets and Buffalo Bills. Okay, so but if I'm only looking at the black and white picture, I cannot figure it out because I don't have a good vision to easily and clearly figure out the rating or the labels on players' helmets, although I have access to those information. So that makes it is easier for us to understand why do we need color contrast to for the readers to actually comprehend the information with colorful communication. Thank you. And we also want to make sure that color does not only we can not only rely on the color to show the differences and to facilitate effective communication. And one thing is that we can actually use, next one, please. We can actually use different designs in terms of the text. For example, we can use bold text to help us reading as well. However, the effectiveness of bodied fonts heavily depend on the colors of our choices and depend on the color contrast we facilitate. For example, the blue terms of blue texts are easier to read for most of us, and the yellow fonts are relatively difficult for us to figure it out with a gray background. Okay. And then the fourth rule will be about contextual hyperlinks. You should always have the text to describe your this particular link that you offer to the students. Before joining the program, I always put the hyperlink with this term here. I think it is very direct to the students, but after I participate in the accessibility fellowship program, I finally figure out that is not the most effective way to communicate to my students. So so it is easy fix. However, it actually changes my thought processing about the accessibility working. And then we want to make sure that our clickable clickable text is a word or a phrase that someone can actually naturally search for. For example, the School of Business is always having this launched competition every fall semester. However, if we want to make sure that all the students that we want to promote the event to can actually search this term on the website, on social media platforms, we can actually make sure that our clickable text to the flyer of the event to be at, for example, at launched event, launched competition, something like that. Okay. For example, here are some examples of yes and no's. So the first one is a yes, please register for the community potluck by going to. So it actually have a direction to the participants. And then the second one says, please register for WRVO, community potluck. So it also have a direction for the participants. And the third one is a no. It was what I did in the previous in the previous semesters. And I personally do not feel good about using myself as a negative example, but I did do that. I committed this crime. And then let's move on to the next slide. And then this next slide is about the fifth rule of plain language usage. As academic workers or professors, we tend to use terms that people like students, they cannot fully understand. So I have the tendency to use jargons a lot at the first years of my academic experience. So now I know it is easy, it is very effective. It will make our communication with the students relatively effective by just using the plain language that they can understand. Right. So the first thing is that we need to use the words not only us fully understand by ourselves, but also ensure that the other people, our audience, our students can fully understand them as well. For myself, my English is not my first language. So I typically search for, slangs for this particular term, something like that, to adapt to my audience better. And avoid usage of unnecessary words. For example, you don't want to show off your GRE level kind of vocabulary while talking to communicating with your students. And typically we can switch to a simpler word. And then we can also avoid using technical terms, which also refers to as jargons. And we will write in a active voice because we're actually expecting people to take action in terms of what is communicated from us. And then we would like to limit our usage of modifiers such as very and extremely, because when you communicate something to the students, typically that is only necessary. We don't want to repeat ourselves. So a very personal suggestion is actually try to use those writing edit tools, for example, Grammarly or ChatGPT to polish your communications with students. However, based on your own understanding of, the AI tools probably will add more words or add more length to your writing. Be careful about that. Be cautious about that when you are using adding tools to help you polish the communication content.
Just to add what Yiru said, it's not just for us. I have seen my students when they are doing their reports or when they are preparing their presentation slides, they search for ornamental, fancy or sophisticated words, they call that. So it is important not only for us, but also to explain it to students that it is good to use a plain, simple language to communicate so that the information could be easily reached by all type of audience.
Thank you, Poon. Okay. Next. Yeah, so I think I'm speaking on behalf of all of my peer fellows. So I think now everyone of our web courses, no matter, so nowadays when we're teaching in person, I still convey most of my course content via digitally. Okay, so most of my courses are, I believe it's more accessible than it was when they were. Sorry, that's the more appropriate to say. So I personally think, and we believe that making those improvements is not really rocket science. When we're spending more time and spending more effort trying to understand the students' need, that is the first step that we want to make the move. And then some of those improvements do take time, depending on what action that has to be taken. For example, when I first started to teach a fully online class, a asynchronous class, that there is no face-to-face time with students, that is for SUNY online course. I was under the advice that I need to create captioned course videos for the students. That takes a lot of time, honestly speaking, but it also paid off well, because in my course evaluations, I saw the students mention something like, the professor makes a lot of effort to design the course. She even has those course content recorded and captioned. So I believe it fits our accessibility goal in terms of having different formats of course content to convey the same course content. Okay. Next, please.
So just to add on to what you said, my take-home message being accessibility fellow, when I initially started, I was literally wondering whether it is possible by looking at all those resources, but I've learned few things. One, making smaller steps is good. At least we are starting to do something. And number two, once we start learning it, I felt it's really easy. It's not, as you said. And number three, I'm making not only the course, but also I'm making the experience to be equal to all my students. And also I see the difference with online courses as well as in-person courses. And it's more with online courses because just like what she said, having a caption and having those figures explained, having the right color contrast, and especially to explain it good and present it in a way that it could be read by the students, it made a lot of difference. And also to mention, no document is 100% perfect, so it is. I understood that, but we have to just keep working, practice accessibility in order to get there and do the troubleshooting for all the challenges, field specific challenges we will be facing.
Thank you. And in summary, we want to make sure that when we are designing the course content, we always have this accessibility function or a mindset in our mindset. And here is a web accessibility evaluation tool if you want to, yeah. So if what you can do is put your course content in the web page address and let the website assist you in terms of making your course content more accessible. The platform actually use different symbols and points to make sure that we understand and making modifications as we should.
Yeah, so this is the SUNY speaker web page that's been evaluated by the web page here. And we could see there are no errors, but yes, there are some alerts in here. So we could get the details on the alerts. So we could use any of our own documents with this web page, and we could able to fix it if it's like a greater alert or greater error. It is necessary to fix it so that it will be easier for everyone to get the content we claim here. And back to our.
So, further, we have some additional resources for your view. And in this winter breakout session, we do have further activities scheduled.
Yeah, so here is the accessibility webpage for us, which has pretty much all the information. The principles are described in here, and we do have huge amount of information in the form of written documents and video tutorials. And also there's information about the accessibility initiative groups available on campus. So like the steering committee or the work group we have, and also about the fellows program and who are the members. You could contact either in the department or in general if you have any questions about accessibility. So we'll be happy to answer your questions, and in case if we cannot, at least we'll be able to direct you to a right person so that your questions or your queries are being explained well. And there are, I mean, here is the same web page about the fellows program I showed you. So that's the same link we already saw. And we do have several workshops as part of this winter breakout sections. So here is the details of that. So we'll have our peer fellow E presenting tomorrow on the structured content about the Word, using Word and Google Docs to make the contents. And about the color and contrast principle, we'll have Bristol presenting on Friday. And there are other sections related to accessibility. We do have the link in here if you want to look at the workshops. And you could just register for the sections you're interested in. We could take the questions. Let me just check.
No questions, just comments and answers.
Oh, so Amy's question is the alternate text mostly for screen reader. Yes, it is primarily for screen reader, but I should also mention that it depends on the nature of images, whether you're going to present it for which purpose, whether it is going to be for a printable purpose or it's going to be just a digitally accessed document. So mostly it is for the screen reader, but it is also helpful for getting information about the image presented. And the next one. Yes. I think this.
I just would ask
Okay.
somebody answer
Yeah.
to E.
Okay, okay,
Or to, Amy,
okay,
and then just clarify the contract.
all right. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't close it. We'll stop the recording first.
Okay.
Thanks, Boone. Thanks, Yiru.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you. Thank you, Casey.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pong.